Today on New Craft Workshop, we're building a mobile router cart. All right, let's get going by breaking down this piece of plywood on the floor with my track saw over 1.5 inch thick piece of rigid foam insulation. We're going to cut a little oversized here, and we're going to use the table saw and our homemade panel cutter to square and finish off our sizes over the table saw. We don't ever want to trust factory edges, so we're going to clean all this up after we cut this and break it down here on the floor. And speaking of being accurate, we want to make sure our blade is as true to 90 as we can, especially since this build we are going to be doing some rabbets and dado cuts. We want everything as precise as possible on this build. Let's get started by cutting everything down to length and width for all of our panels. I'm going to rip everything down to width, square off both sides, and then we're going to use the homemade panel cutter right here, and we're going to make all of our ends perpendicular to our side cuts. There's going to be a total of 6 vertical components that make up this cabinet and 2 horizontal. I am working desperately, guys, to get my website up and running. I'm hoping by the end of June it is there. All of the builds that I've done so far, we will have those plans up. It's going to include cut lists, detailed instructions, and a link to the video. Hopefully we'll have it up by June. Be patient. I'm still kind of working my way through this whole YouTube thing, and I appreciate each and every one of you guys' support so far. So hang in there with me, guys. We're almost there. All right, time to get this dado blade set up. We're going to install our dado blade for a 3/4 inch wide cut. This is what we're going to use for all of our dados for our horizontal and vertical pieces, as well as our rabbets on the bottom of the cabinet, as well as our rabbet cuts when we go to get our drawers assembled. So I'm going to attach my cabinet to the bottom of this Rockler tabletop via pocket screws. So the 4 vertical pieces are all going to get 5 pocket hole screws along their entire width. I want to be able to remove this tabletop in the future for whatever reason, so I'm not going to glue it down. We're just going to count on all these pocket holes to hold this thing in place. And I'm going to use my framing square to mark my dados and rabbets on the outside of all of these boards. I could simply flip this over, drill from the inside, then flip the board back over, and then re-drill and countersink from the outside. But I'm just going to mark them, do all of my drilling from one side, and I'm using screws at my attachment points at my rabbets and dados because honestly I just don't feel like clamping this together and waiting for the glue to dry. So we're going to use some screws, hold this in place, get this thing going as quick as possible. I'm a little impatient, and honestly I just want to get this thing built. And you can see you got to make sure you got a good amount of glue in your joints. Make sure you wipe off your excess. And I'm going to screw this together with some specialty screws by Spax. Even if you pre-drill into the end of plywood, you take the risk of blowing it up and splitting it. So make sure you pre-drill and then use some screws like these Spax screws that are designed to go in there without blowing this plywood out. So the cabinet's coming together and we're basically done with this portion of the cabinet build. All that's really left is to take some measurements corner to corner, make sure we are square. And as you can see by my reaction, we're pretty spot on. I'm happy about that.
Hell yeah.
So this is one of two panels that I'm using right here to build out the dust collection cavity of my cabinet. I'm just going to put those in place with some pocket screws. There are going to be wires inside this cabinet. The power wire coming from the router and the power cable coming from the switch that will eventually get mounted on the front of this are all going to be housed in this dust collection port. Just want to make sure I have access to this thing if needed for any particular reason. So right here, I'm just finding the center in both directions of my cabinet. Then I'm going to go 6 inches in either direction of my mark from center. That's going to give me a 12 by 12 opening centered in my cabinet. The cutout in the rockler table, I believe, is a little smaller than 12 by 10. I think it's like 11 and a half by 9 and a half, but we're just going to go 12 by 12, give ourselves a little bit of wiggle room when we drop this thing into place. So right here, I'm taking some measurements. My cabinet is 29 wide, 21 deep. So I'm just taking that 29 by 21, centering it on the bottom, making some marks so that when I put my cabinet up on here, it's nice and centered on the bottom of this table. So right around here is when I realized that I had put the top on backwards and it was getting late in the day. So yeah, I was completely finished. We'll pick it up tomorrow.
That's it.
All right, so we're going to start day two by getting all of our drawer components cut down. Everything's going to get cut down to width on the table saw, and then we're going to use the panel cutter to cut everything down to length. I want everything as square as possible when it comes to making drawers. So my drawer build is going to have a 1/4 inch dado cut along all four sides, a 1/2 inch from the bottom. I'm going to drop in this 1/4 inch hardboard MDF. I'm not sure exactly how it's labeled at your big box store. Lowe's in my area calls it hardboard. Home Depot calls it MDF. That's what we're making our bottoms of our drawers out of, whatever they call it in your area. So right here, we're taking our drawer fronts and backs, and we are cutting a 3/4 inch rabbet in them to hold the side panels for the drawers. And this component right here is going to be the router bit storage in the top right of the cabinet. This is going to basically be a drawer that pulls out, but it's not going to be completely enclosed. It'll have two shelves that you have access to that'll hold all of your router bits once that part of the drawer is finished and installed. All right, back to the dado set. This is the one where we're doing 1/4 inch width, and now we're going to take all of our drawer components and cut that 1/4 inch dado 1/2 inch up from the bottom. All right, assembly time for all of these components. Again, drilling and countersinking down the exterior side of all of these dados and rabbets. This is the drawer slash shelf on the top right that I was telling you about. You can see how this thing is going to look and operate shortly. Drawers are rabbets in the front, solid plywood down the side, and then we drop that MDF in that 1/4 inch dado we cut earlier, and that's how every single one of these drawers goes together. The only difference is, of course, the dimensions. All right, let's get these drawer slides put on. I'm not going to show you the entire process. We're just going to show you this one here. I'm going to measure 1 inch up, draw a line. That's where my slide is going to mount to my drawer. The slide portion that goes inside the cabinet is going to be 1.5 inches up. That gives us a 1/2 inch clearance on the bottom of the drawer. In this particular shelf, I'm sure you can see I am having to do the slides on the bottom. I don't have two sides to mount slides on, so we're going to do this one a little different, and we're going to double up the slides on the bottom. It's definitely secure enough to hold this thing in place. Once we get this bottom drawer installed, I'm just going to measure up, give myself a 1/2 inch clearance between these two drawers, put a mark, use my square to draw a line. That's where I'm going to mount my slide for this particular drawer mount, and the process is just simply going to repeat itself. So I've seen much more complicated ways to mount drawer fronts, but here's all I'm going to do. I'm going to put this piece in place on my cabinet. I'm going to find the center, and I made some homemade drawer pulls that are about 3 inches wide, so I want my screw spacing 2 inches. I'm going to find the center of this drawer front, measure 1 inch in either direction, and then I'm simply going to drill a hole through the drawer front into the actual drawer itself. It's as accurate as you need to be, and I can assure you when we're done with this, I'll show you the spacing of these drawers. There's no reason to do this a lot more. There's no reason to do this any more complicated way than this. And same thing with my handle that I made. I'm just going to find the center of it, go out 1 inch in either direction, pre-drill some holes so that it lines up with the holes I drilled in the drawer fronts and the drawers. Pull the drawer out, drive the screw in from the inside, and make sure everything's lined up nice and true. All right, final step, we're going to get these casters put on. I am using the same casters I used on my mobile planer cart. These things are extremely affordable on Amazon. I'll put a link down in the description to these things, and they are rock solid. All four of them swivel, all four of them lock. They are absolutely great. And that's it. That's my take on a router cart. If you guys are interested in building one of these, like I said earlier, please be patient. My website is almost up. I'll have some plans available for this particular build with all the dimensions, a cut list, and a breakdown of all the parts I used, from the tabletop to the casters to the plywood to the dust collection port here on the back. So I appreciate you guys' time as always. Give this thing a shot, and if you do, don't forget, hit me up on Instagram. Send me some pictures of your build. Let me know how it worked out for you, and we will catch you on YouTube.